Welcome to the Musicians Creating Prosperity podcast, where you'll discover business, mindset, and leadership strategies to put your music business on autopilot. I'm your host, Dr. Fabiana Claure, pianist and former university professor turned seven-figure entrepreneur dedicated to empowering artists worldwide. Whether you're a seasoned musician or other creative entrepreneur, this podcast is your guide to financial, artistic, and lifestyle freedom. Let's dive in. Welcome to the Musicians Creating Prosperity podcast. Today, I have an incredible guest, Christopher Still, who's joining us and will be sharing his journey, both being a renowned performer, trumpet player in the Los Angeles Philharmonic, as well as an entrepreneur in his own right, building his Honesty Pill brand and associated businesses. I'm excited to have a conversation to dive into all things being a musician and entrepreneur and leveraging technology in today's day and age to create a business that can work in a way that allows us to balance all the things that matter the most to us in life. Welcome, Chris.
Thank you, Fabiana. So happy to be here, and congratulations on the podcast and everything you're doing. And I feel super honored to be helping you kick this thing off because this is one of my favorite spaces to be in. I love podcasting. I love technology. Sometimes I wonder if I love technology more than the things that I use it for, but we can get into that if you want to. So looking forward to this conversation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much. And it's been such a journey, seeing your evolution and seeing how far you've come since we met, what was it, almost 4 years ago now, in early 2020, and being able to witness the development of your business and how you've been able to do that in conjunction to having everything else that you do in your life as a busy dad and husband and, full-time Philharmonic player. So why don't you start by sharing with us, how do you manage juggling all these things in life? What are some of the strategies that you've been able to put in place around how you manage all the things that you do?
Yeah, I remember when we met, it was just before the pandemic, and I had been using Zoom and other online hybrid tools for my coaching and teaching before the pandemic. But wow, the timing for us was really kind of amazing that we kind of were in that mode already and already had a lot of the tools worked out and the bugs worked out of how to connect with people through that medium. And then, of course, the whole world got onto Zoom. And I mean, one of the silver linings from COVID was that the access, obviously not everyone has access, but the people who have it but didn't use it are now so familiar with this type of interaction that it's really expanded the reach that we can do to help people and serve them. So to your question about juggling and balance, I don't know that I'm the poster child of balance because it's a daily sort of struggle to make sure that I am focusing my actions with my efforts with my goals so that I'm actually getting the things done that I want to and not spend my entire life in a reactive state, which, other musicians who are listening to this will know that the job of a musician, especially an orchestral musician, is to do like what I'm told to do. I'm given tasks, I'm given pieces of music, and I'm asked to play it in a certain way. So a lot of my job is reactive, reacting to the stick, reacting to my colleagues, reacting to where I'm at in that day. And that's a great thing, but it's also not great when managing your life. So I've had to learn some tools about being proactive and finding ways to make sure that I'm just not wasting the time and energy that I have and misaligning when I'm at my best. When am I doing that work that's really hard? When am I doing that work that's easier?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it would be good to maybe expand on the context of my question, because of course I know you, I know everything you've done, but I think it would be helpful to maybe allow our listeners to have a better understanding of what are these things you're juggling at the moment. So why don't you tell us more about Honesty Pill, about how you've built that brand in conjunction to having been, a Philharmonic player since 2007. Tell us more about what was the birth of Honesty Pill and how did it come to be, and what has it become since you started it?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'll try and just give you a little context for the answer, which is I was not a naturally talented player. I was probably like the best kid in my band in high school, but I did not have a lot of basic fundamentals down on playing the trumpet. And I went to school for music education at the Crane School of Music in New York, and I was going to be a band director, and that was my goal. And I did all the music education and learning how to teach the oboe and how to play the bassoon and all this stuff. And my junior year, I had an epiphany that maybe I liked performing almost as much as I liked helping other people learn how to learn. And I decided to go do a master's in orchestral performance at NEC in Boston, where again, I think I find like I rose up, I evolved while I was there. There were much better performers at NEC than at Crane because it was a more performance focused school. But when I graduated, what I discovered was I still didn't have the tools to get a job, not only trumpet playing wise, but also just like how do you get a job? How do auditions work? How do nerves work? How does time management work? All of these things that I didn't have in my toolbox because it just wasn't part of the curriculum in most schools then. And, or maybe I just wasn't ready to hear it. I don't know. But point being is I kind of had a moment. This is sort of like my honesty pill moment where I was working at a shoe store selling running shoes, which was actually a really, really fun job. I loved it. But I wasn't playing orchestra jobs. I wasn't actually making a living. And I had a huge amount of student loan debt. So that was the moment where I said, okay, I can choose a path here. I can keep doing what I'm doing, or I can change what I'm doing. What is it that I have to change? And that's where this introspection started, and becoming very, very, very vulnerable and very uncomfortable with what I couldn't do as well as what I could do. So fast forward to getting orchestra jobs in different orchestras throughout the years. People come to me and ask, how do I do auditions? How do I manage my time? How do I play the trumpet this way? How do I do that? I found myself repeating the same things over and over and over and over again. And we could never really get past that beginning point of evolution and learning until we got that done. So with this whole intersection of hybrid learning with the internet and me repeating myself, it just seemed obvious to create some sort of resource that people could use for free on their own before they've ever met me, that would impart some of that information. And if it was helpful, great. And then they could come and fly to LA, spend the money on the airline ticket and the hotel, the lesson, and then we could take a couple of steps forward. So that was sort of the genesis. And I think it's evolved to a point where now I think I enjoy coaching as much or more as I do playing in the Philharmonic. But it's definitely been a journey.
Yes, yes, absolutely. That's so inspiring. And tell us more about, the different types of coaching opportunities that you've created, because you've worked with, orchestra auditioning, you've worked with business development, you've worked with like high performance training. So tell us more about what the different types of coaching options you've created as part of your Honesty Pill brand.
Well, it started with sort of how to do an audition. And the first step in how to maintain success in the audition circuit is organization. So I created a fully online, self-paced, totally recorded course on organization called the Strategy Session. And I spent like over a year fussing and perfectionizing and overthinking it. And I created it in a bubble, and I finally made it, and I released it. And I think like maybe 5 people signed up for it. And nobody said, wow, this changed my life. It was very non-impactful and definitely not transformative. And so I kind of backed up a little bit and thought, all right, how can I teach auditions in a way that actually helps people more? And it turns out that good coaching, good teaching is not about information. It's about transformation. And so me being in the room with them, or just anybody actually being in the room with them, was the thing that was starting to get them moving forward. So that was the birth of my first actually impactful course called the Audition Accelerator, where I help musicians who already have, some momentum, kind of find their pace, find their goal, come up with a map. Of course, then the pandemic hit, and all the orchestra shut down and all the auditions shut down. So I felt kind of like, well, I can't really coach auditions right now because I don't even have a job. The LA Phil shut its doors for a long, long time. So what I did realize was that was a moment where musicians have so many tools and so many skills related to what we do. Why don't we talk about how we can build those into other things? So then I started teaching people on how to create financially viable, really satisfying, really transformative, really impactful things that they can help other people with. Like one of my current clients helps people navigate college applications and scholarships. Another client deals with nutrition for tired musicians. All these types of things where it's not playing your instrument. And so that was where sort of helping people create online businesses, the Online Business Accelerator was born. Then I think I did a practice accelerator, which was just what I do in the practice room and bringing in different people on practice hacks. And it was great. Then the podcast came out. So everything sort of was born from that initial revelation of, I have to sort of take charge here. I can't let other people be the gatekeeper in my career, and just created a thing.
Love that. I love that. And I think one important thing to kind of underline in what you're sharing is this journey of stepping into completely unknown territory, right? I mean, up until that point, before you started building the Honesty Pill brand and all the different offers, you were an orchestral musician. That's pretty much all you did for decades. I mean, is that true? I mean, would you say that that's like you were focused on that? That was your full work, or did you do other things before you did the Honesty Pill
I mean, I
outside
have
of the
other
orchestra
interests.
job?
Yeah, I mean, I have other interests and I have
Right,
hobbies and I do things. I'm not a person who defines themselves with the trumpet
right.
or the job, but as far as like income
Yeah,
generation or helping people, I mean, I taught lessons and
yeah,
things. I would coach chamber music, but it was nothing like, I had no idea about writing a program, designing a website, video editing, audio, podcasting, public speaking, sales, like no clue.
right.
And the quote I love saying, and I've been saying it forever, is leap and build a helicopter on the way down.
Yeah,
It's just like, just do it, just start and see what happens. And you're going to make a lot of mistakes. You're going to do a lot of stupid things you wish you hadn't done.
right.
You're going to publish videos with no audio and not realize it
Mhm,
till it's over.
mhm,
And stuff
mhm.
like that happens all the time.
Right.
But yeah, no, I had no idea what I was doing in the beginning, and it just sort of failed upwards through all of it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's the most important thing to kind of underline. It's a mindset approach that you adopted towards creating all of these initiatives that was involving a lot of learning and stepping out of your comfort zone. And I remember during the time of the pandemic, you shared a thought of that, like necessity breeds innovation, right? Necessity is what creates this entrepreneurial spirit. But tell us more, what helped you be so open-minded and willing to learn all these things and jump into this online world and building this business and doing it in a way where you acquired many new skills at once. You went into editing, producing, recording, as you mentioned, all these things. How did you manage to acquire so many skills in such a short amount of time, and how did you then turn it into a way where it didn't consume you? Because a lot of what we talk about in this podcast is creating businesses that can ultimately be run on autopilot, right? That can be run in a way that doesn't take all of our time. Somehow you managed to create all these different programs, and still you have a full-time job at the LA Phil, and you have a family. So talk to us about how you were able to not just start these businesses but also get them to start working in a way that wasn't going to consume your entire life.
I've had help. I've had a lot of help. I've had great coaches. My wife, Amanda, is brilliant at marketing and messaging and organization and prioritization. And so I'm not afraid to ask for help, and I'm not afraid to pay for help when I need it. And if you can outsource something that somebody else can do that you don't want to do or that you're not good at doing, learning to let go of that control is a huge part of it. And tying on to that, and this is what held me back in that first course, that strategy session, was letting go of perfectionism. That was probably the hardest thing for me. And classical musicians, creative, A-type people, I think that asking for help and letting go of control is the two most difficult aspects of anything, let alone just running a business. So that was hard. I still struggle with that too. I mean, I still do all my own editing. I don't outsource any of that because I actually enjoy it. Like right after we talk, I'm gonna be jumping in and editing a podcast. I like it. It's fun. It actually fires my brain up. But if I didn't enjoy that or I didn't have the tools, let go of that and focus on what you do best, and that'll help you sort of move through that process of doing it. The last thing I think, I mean, I'm not like an expert, but this is just like what happened to me, was there's a lot of fear. There's a lot of the imposter syndrome. And when I first, you can call it coming out as a coach or whatever, but like when I first said, hey, I'm doing audition coaching, and it's not just for trumpet players. Like I have clients that play all the instruments. Some of my colleagues around the country were like, Well, what gives you the right to coach a bassoonist or a violist or a percussionist? And goes back to what I said earlier, is it's all the same stuff, that we're all dealing with the same challenges. There's nothing to do with a trumpet. There certainly are specific things that are trumpet related, but if you zoom back a little bit, it's all the same stuff. So getting over the fear of other people judging you or feeling like an imposter. One of my podcast guests said, there's no such thing as imposter syndrome. It's just imposter habit. It's like we choose to let other people's uh, criticism of us or even just opinions of us impact our behavior. And I kind of live by the mantra that, your opinion of me is none of my business. Like, I don't even want to know, because I'm doing my own thing. And that took a while to evolve to where I am.
Mm, I love that. I love that. And in a way, I'd love for you to maybe highlight, what do you know now about being an entrepreneurial musician and juggling all these different things that you wish you knew when you started building and scaling your online business?
Oh, I love that question. So somebody said somewhere along the millions of YouTube tutorials and podcasts and books and stuff, that it said, like, let's take podcasting, for example. If you are happy with your first podcast episode, you waited too long to release it. And I heard that and I kind of cringed, because I was like, well, I was actually pretty happy with my first podcast episode. It was, I wasn't the greatest interviewer, but like the technical things that I could control were pretty much already there. And so that reaction that I had to that comment, I understand what that person was saying. It's like, let go, just do it, just get moving. Um, I feel like that highlighted the the way musicians work, or anybody who gets anything done, athletes, actors. We kind of just want to make it really great before we let it go. That's why we spend all that time in the practice room before we walk on the stage. I wish I had known to meet people where they are with the things I was creating, instead of just sitting at home and creating them. And that, because I think that is most of the synergy, is talking to a person and say, well, what are you working on right now? What are you struggling with? What's like two things you're working on in your practice room that are not working? And they'll tell you what those things are. And if you listen, whole space, then you can show up where they are. And I wish I'd have known that from day one, but hindsight 2020, you learn to listen and learn to figure out what those things are by screwing it up 100 times.
Right, right. Yeah, and I love what you said earlier, that, people's opinions of you are none of your business. Like, you don't have to worry about what other people think. And I think part of the initial hesitation on going to your market and talking to people initially before you put this together can come from this fear of, what are they going to think? How are they going to, perceive this initial outreach, this conversation? And so I think, in a way, your maturity, your development of these limiting beliefs and letting go of them to be able to welcome new mindsets has allowed you to now be able to be more direct in going to market and creating conversations and developing all the other offers you've built later on in a much more strategic way, without feeling that you're just stuck in the practice room perfecting these before you bring them to market. Would you say?
Totally. And by the way, sitting in the practice room perfecting things is so boring. Like, get out of the practice room at some point and like play music with somebody, have a conversation with somebody, interact with a real person, like do the work. But also, it's kind of like learning a foreign language. You can hole up in your apartment in Europe, in Spain, studying your grammar conjugations for years and never go downstairs to the cafe and practice. Or you can learn a couple sentences and go down there and fumble through it and like start a conversation. So we are so petrified of perfectionism and control that it's very hard to step across that line and let go of it. But that's where the growth happens. That's where the development occurs. It's just like screwing everything up. And I'm not afraid to mess up. So I do my podcast live now because I'm tired of editing anything. So I don't edit anything. As far as like what people say, I edit like the front and the back of it, but I don't edit the words. What we do is what we do. And I think that was hard for me. It took me 33 podcast episodes to figure that out.
I think there's so much magic that comes from the natural energy that happens in a real conversation without overproducing things. And so I get that. It's like live performance, right? Versus a recording. It's the
Totally.
same thing in a way. So, what would you say are some of the things that, in your experience with your online business, specifically around orchestra auditions, what are some of the core things that you teach to musicians who want to understand how to prepare for auditions, but also who may want to transfer that into building their businesses? Because in a way, when they're preparing for audition, they're also kind of sharpening up their own skills as entrepreneurs and presenting their portfolio. It's not just the musical side, it's the entire persona that is going to be evaluated, right, for these potential positions. So what are some of the things that you focus on when you work with your clients in preparing them for both auditions as well as for, their career development?
That's a really big question. I mean, there's so many so many little paths we could go down, either on the orchestral side or the business development side. But I think if I could give like a maybe more helicopter view answer to that
Yeah, yeah.
question, it would be, and this just seems so ridiculous that I'm going to say this, but this is what it is. Do you have a well-defined goal? Do you have a way to metric your improvement? And the most important part is, are you aligning your efforts with that goal? I'll give you an example. I have a trumpet player who has to play Ravel Alvarado de Grazioso, which has this really quick triple tonguing excerpt, and it is no fun to play in an audition because you just have to just like rattle this thing off. And they're like, I'm having a really hard time with this excerpt. Every time I leap up to the high note, the triple tonguing goes away, and X, Y, Z, A, B, C, whatever. And I say, great, all right, let's look at your actions. Are you practicing triple tonguing regularly? Do you have a triple tonguing routine? How many times this week did you work on triple tonguing out of context from the excerpt? Oh, not at all. Oh, okay. Well, that's a really good place to start because your goal is to win an orchestra job. One of the ways you're going to measure that is, can I play the list, but can I play my instrument? And the answer here is no. Are you aligning your effort with that goal? No. So, like, it's so basic. And that example may seem on the nose, but I've literally had that same exact scenario hundreds of times with people. I get nervous at auditions. Great. How many mocks did you do in the last 10 weeks? Zero. Well, guess what's going to happen when you step on stage
Mhm.
in Chicago or Philadelphia or Berlin? You're going to freak out because it's the first time you've done it. So, whether or not it's getting on camera for your business or whether it's getting over performance anxiety at an audition, aligning your efforts with your goals, having a clear goal, and having really good ways of measuring it with honesty, specificity, and accountability, having some help. Those are all parts of this puzzle. I work on these all day myself too. I mean, I have my spots where I'm blind to those. Luckily, I've surrounded myself with people both in my business and my home who are not afraid to tell me exactly when that's not working. Have you met my wife? She's like, she will tell me, boom, and I love that. So I think that's kind of the generic sort of helicopter view answer to the question is, have a goal, have a metric, align your efforts with that goal, and then just move the needle 1% every day. You're good.
I love that. And I think one of the biggest problems for musicians who are struggling to build their businesses and really reach any goals is that they don't have a clear goal. And it may sound very basic, yet most people don't have it. I certainly know the conversations I have with so many musicians coming into my world when it comes to really understanding what do you want. Most of the times that's a very fuzzy picture. And
Well,
in
why
many
don't they
ways,
have a goal? They
yeah.
don't have a goal because it's scary, scary, scary to say out loud. I want to be the principal flute of the Vienna Philharmonic. That's scary to say because people will immediately say, how dare you think you should do that? Like exactly like with me being a coach or starting a business, like what gives you the right? I
Mhm.
give me the right. I
Yeah,
decided to do it, and so should you. So,
I
like,
love
I
that.
think that's why people often don't have a goal is because there's everything we do is motivated by either fear or love.
Mhm.
And I mean, that's a pretty generic sort of thing to say, but like if you don't have a well-defined goal and yet you're like in your sixth year of music school and $50,000 in debt, the reason you don't have a goal is that you're afraid to actually get down and have it.
Mhm.
And if you're already doing that, it's time to do it.
I love it.
It's
I
time to
love it.
face the music, which is the tagline on my website. Like, get in there and see what you need to do.
Mhm.
Otherwise, it's not going to happen all by itself. And that's when you end up veering off into something, and then you get bitter and you start to attract a lot of negative energy around you, and then it just spirals.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think one of the things that is coming across in everything you're sharing is this feeling of self initiative and ownership of the life that you get to create, and not waiting to be given permission from either awards or institutions or, agencies, managers, publishers, agents, but really deciding that you are worthy with what you have up until this point, even though you may want to continue growing, even though there's still more you want to accomplish, being okay with who you are now and deciding that you deserve to have what you want, to go after that, and to not feel that you need to wait for someone to give you permission to claim that authority. So tell me, what are your thoughts on empowering musicians, and how do you work in getting them to take those types of courageous steps, whether it's preparing for an audition or launch their program, or do, like, what are some of the ways that you encourage them to be able to overcome those fears, those initial hesitations?
Well, I mean, it has to be pointed out that I have had the most privileged opportunities handed to me. Education. I'm a straight white guy in the United States. Like, everything has been built to serve this demographic, which is part of why our country is going through such a painful evolution right now, is we're realizing that is insane. It doesn't work. It's not sustainable. It's not right. It's not ethical. That's a whole other topic. But, people who don't have that opportunity, or more importantly, people who feel like they don't deserve or don't have those opportunities, it's really difficult to step up and say, I want this. I'm going to take it. I'm going to go for it. It's pretty easy as a white guy to say that, but I think that the motivation needs to come from a place of just really powerful self-worth and self-love. And that is not easy for humans, because we are sensitive to so many things. I just try and tell people, look, you don't have to be perfect. You don't have to eat the whole elephant at one time. Don't compare your beginning to somebody else's end. Just set the GPS coordinates on what you want, and go for it if you want that. But just move the needle. It's one step after another. And you are going to face doubt. You are going to face imposter syndrome. You're going to want to quit. You're going to think you're crazy. You're going to think, I cannot do this. And you might be right, but whether you think you're right or not, keep moving forward towards that goal, and shed those feelings of doubt, and you'll get to where you want to go. That whole idea of sort of the law of attraction, and getting in alignment with what you want is definitely a great place to start. I mean, whether or not you believe in that, I'd rather align myself with what I want than align myself with what I don't want, because we know stuff I don't want is going to come to me. I would like to at least put some energy into what I do want coming to me, and then align my actions with that.
I love that. That's so powerful. And can you tell me more about what do you feel are some of the biggest changes that have happened in the last few years that you feel musicians need to be aware of and adapt towards, and as it relates to developing your businesses and just being entrepreneurial minded artists?
In terms of like orchestra work or business development, or what do you think?
Yes, in terms of creating a brand as a musician and just building your life as an artist, whether it's as a business owner or if you want to seek opportunities for employment somewhere, at the end of the day, you need to have something desirable that someone wants, either to hire you or to, become a client of yours for your business. But what would you say are some of the things that musicians need to be aware of? I feel like your story, just everything you're talking about, is already showcasing those values, but perhaps it would be helpful for our listeners to hear you maybe state them directly. Some things that you could say, like, these are some must haves that you need to adopt from a mindset standpoint, as well as from any other area.
Okay. So I think the way I'd answer that question is, there are a lot of people out there that can do exactly what you can do. So what I guess I'm saying is, you're not special. I'm not special. Fabiana, you're not special either. There's a lot of people that can do all the things that we can do. However, no one else can do exactly what you do the way you do it. So if you're an artist, for example, a visual artist, and you're amazing at all different types of painting techniques and drawing and ink and whatever, there's a lot of people like that who can do that. A lot of them. You're the only one with that voice. So what you need to do is two things. You need to believe in the voice and say, what I have to share is relevant. I want to bring this to the world. I think the world would be a better place if my paintings were hanging in people's homes. And then you need to have the ability to get out of the bottom. So the way I like to explain this is, people say there's no room at the top. You can't be an artist and make money. You can't play the trumpet for a living. You can't run a business. Well, the reality is there is room for people who can do it right. Has anybody ever made a living playing the trumpet? Of course. Has anybody ever created a business that generated all the money and support and love that they wanted? Of course they have. So why are you any different? The difference is those people who have been successful have figured out how to dismantle the myth of there's no room at the top. The way I explain this is if 100 flute players audition for the LA Phil, what percentage of them will get cut before the finals? The answer is 90%-ish. So there's 10% that made it to the finals and 90% that didn't. Does that mean that the lower 90 are bad people or they can't play the flute or they don't have good articulation? Who knows? Probably not. What it means is they haven't figured out how to deliver what they do when it matters. The 10% have figured out how to deliver what they do when it matters, regardless if that's auditions or making a pitch for a program that's going to save someone's life and help somebody. You have to figure out how to take your voice that you believe in with just like white hot clarity. And then you have to come up with the tools to deliver that to people in a way that will connect with them, whether it's a committee or a student in the middle of nowhere or a college that you want to work at. And I think that takes a lot of awareness. It takes help. Like, don't try and do this on your own. You will make so many mistakes and spend so much time and money that you didn't need to spend. And I mean, I feel like that's the advice I would give someone. If we were on a call right now, I would say, believe that you should do this. Nobody can tell you if they can or you can't. And then come up with a structure and come up with a plan, implement all that other stuff I was talking about, and then get ready to make a ton of mistakes.
Yes, I love that. I love that. What has been an influence for you in your approach to coaching your clients, both for the audition programs and business programs? Have you had any specific books or literature or resources that you feel have impacted and influenced your ability to work with your clients?
Oh man, so many books, and people who've already heard any sort of interview or anything I've ever done know that I can never stop talking about Bob Rotella. Golf is Not a Game of Confidence is one of the best books for just development, regardless of what you're doing. I love this book. Bob Rotella, Golf is Not a Game of Confidence. You know, I love Nancy Klein, More Time to Think. I love The Prosperous Coach. I love Seth Godin. I love Jen Sincero. And there's so many cool books that I love and podcasts and things that inspire me. And I like to doom scroll and look at stupid things on Instagram as much as anyone else. But if you find yourself with some time in the car or running or whatever, just throw on a book on tape or listen to a YouTube TED Talk occasionally, and then it'll start like getting your brain flowing a little bit. And I rely on the books behind me all the time in my coaching, in my own practice, parenting, being a husband, being a colleague. Those things are all the same because it's all kind of relationship based and emotional management and emotional guidance system. So, but if I had to pick one book, one thing, it would be Golf is Not a Game of Perfect.
Love it. I love it. Let's talk more about the other things that you do in your life. How have these influenced your approach and the work you do with your clients? I know you have, running background, and of course you have your LA job, but you're a parent. Tell us more about the other sides of Chris that perhaps are not officially known that have influenced your ability to working with clients.
The running one comes up a lot because training for an audition is a lot like training for a marathon. And in so many ways. So that, even this, I'm doing a challenge right now called the Daily Six. It's a 75-day habit challenge. And I like to use technology. We're using an app. And one of the things that made me think about it is like my Garmin running watch gives me all these pieces of feedback all throughout the day. It tracks, and I'm not like governed by this. It's just an interesting lens with which to look through what I'm doing. It shows me what my sleep is like, stress levels, heart rate. It can tell how far off the ground I've traveled when I'm running in between every stride. Like, it gets really granular. And that's not for everybody. My wife always tells me, you love data. Anything that has to do with data, you love it. I just think it's fascinating. So when I go to my clients, and this probably might be one of my flaws as a coach, is I think I tend to get a little too granular sometimes in terms of all the little connective tissue that does everything and lose sight of the big picture. But that's something that I try and work on with some of the books and tools that I mentioned earlier. But that does impact how I work with people in terms of, are you paying attention to what's happening in terms of your improvement or your mistakes? Because what gets measured gets improved, right? So if you're catching a lot of air on every stride when you're running, you're wasting a lot of energy, and you wouldn't know that. How would you, unless you look at some sort of tool that can give you that feedback? So recording oneself in the practice room, using different apps to slow down your practice, having a practice buddy taking mocks. These are all things that come out of this passion for data that I have. I mean, I'm a home brewer too. I make beer. I built an electric brewery in my garage. I've been doing that since college. It's the same thing. It's just like temperature, fermentation, yeast, all these little tiny pieces of data. I love that stuff. So I think that definitely trickles into my teaching style in a way that can maybe be overwhelming to some people, but it's helpful for a lot of people too.
I love it. I love it. Tell us more about the current projects you're working on now, currently.
So, real quickly, I have my marquee programs, I guess I would say, are Audition, Accelerator, which is currently a 16-week academy where everything I teach has been recorded with PDFs and lessons and handouts, and you go through that on your own as far as the content, all the while being part of my community in Slack, where we do weekly posts, Monday wins, Monday goals, Friday wins, just like our coaching group you and I were in together. Mock auditions get posted, coaching requests get posted, challenges. And at the end of the 16 weeks, if you figured out what you need to, you're good. And if you want to stay around, I have a subscription model. And that has been a really fun part of my job, is people evolving from the academy into the subscription and continuing. I've had clients with me for years now on that. So that's one project. The other one is the Online Business Accelerator and one-on-one coaching that used to be live, but now I'm not doing it as a group at the moment. Although I have had some people asking me to run a group, I'm just doing it one-on-one. And I feel like I can really take people farther when it's just the two of us working together on, whatever that business is. Those are kind of where I'm spending my focus. Although I am moving into habit coaching, partially because I'm selfish and I want to get better at it myself. And one of the ways I do that is like running a challenge like the Daily Six, where like if I make all these other people do it, guess who else has to do it? So
Exactly.
that's been a fun way to go about it.
I love it. I love it. Let's talk about time, because I think one of the things in everything you're sharing is your ability to juggle, as we talked about earlier in our call today, so many different things at once. And I think for many musicians who have existing commitments, whether they teach in music schools, they have orchestra jobs, or they're teaching at a university, sometimes the idea of developing your own online business and develop a brand in conjunction to your full-time job may seem like impossible, because you feel like you've got your time already assigned in what you're doing. I certainly know that when I started, I was a professor at university, and it felt very daunting at first to build something like this. But in time, I realized that it's not about just having the physical time in your calendar, but instead it's about clarity, right? But in your case, what would you say has been your winning strategy to manage your time very, very carefully, to be able to create everything you've built from your online business, in addition to your, pretty demanding full-time orchestra job?
Just to be clear, I mean, I screw it up all the time. Like, I mean, I waste so much time all the time, but I've managed to get it to a point of calibration where I guess it's moving forward. So that, just to say that to start, I am definitely not like the model of efficiency and focus. One of the things I love that I learned somewhere along the way is that college professor or whatever who was talking about there was a bucket, like a glass bucket, and there's the big rocks and the medium rocks, small rocks, and sand. You know the story. And it's like, how do you get it all to fit? And of course, the sand represents like the frilly, stupid things like buying a pair of shoes. And the big things are like meditation or learning German or whatever your big thing is. People put the sand in first, and then there's no room for the other stuff. Whereas if you put the big rocks in first, then the medium-sized rocks, and then the small rocks trickle down, and then you just top it off with sand, everything fit in the bucket.
Mhm.
So I try to use that image as a prioritization guide. And the other tool I use uh, really religiously is calendar blocking. I do use that every single day in my life. And Google is my tool of choice. I also use a paper planner called the Passion Planner, which is phenomenal. That's my paper, and then I have my computer. And I have given people a screenshot of my Google Calendar, and somebody said that that gave them heart palpitations because there's so much detail in my Google Calendar. However, if you look at it, it's not that I'm running from one thing to the next, although sometimes with the LA Phil I am. But it's just that I've assigned time to what has to happen, and I've given priority to certain things that are immovable. And then if I need to cancel something, I know exactly what that means for my goal, for my day, and for reality. Like I can't blow off an LA Phil schedule. That is what it is. But I can blow off mowing the yard. Maybe it's more important for me to sit and read a book. But normally it wouldn't occur to me to do that because I'm like, must mow a yard. No, you've prioritized book reading as one of your goals. Go read the book first. And then in the end, I've managed to do the things that I want. And I do get to mowing the yard at some point. So time management, calendar blocking is really, really important for me.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing. Yes, I have seen your training on calendar blocking. It's impressive. I would say it's inspiring, actually. So definitely, if we can get, I know you had it on YouTube at some point. So we'll probably, if we can put it in the show notes, we will. If it's still somewhere available.
Well,
But yeah,
I'll,
it's. I
I'll,
think, yeah.
I'll mention that my YouTube channel at the moment is a big priority. My two big priorities right now are YouTube and podcast. So go subscribe to my YouTube channel, even though the only thing on there right now is podcast interviews, which there's one of yours that we did together back in the day. That channel is about to explode with. I think I'm gonna do it into three sort of channels or three lists or whatever. Audition related things, business related things, and then just like habit stuff, like calendar blocking, like the daily six, like all these things that I find are useful for me.
Mhm.
And I'd love to see people on YouTube checking that out because I think it's going to be a really fun place to grow.
Absolutely. We'll be sure to link it in the show notes so everyone can, subscribe and follow you there. So I guess the last question would be, what would you like for your legacy to be? I know this is a big question, but when you think about, the mission behind everything you're creating, what would you like to be something that you're remembered by, you're known for, that you feel is the lasting legacy of all the work that you're doing, Chris?
I really don't believe in legacy. I don't have one. I'm not living for that. I'm trying to be in the present and enjoy where I'm at right now with the people I'm around right now. So I feel like legacy is more like when I'm gone, I want them to remember me as a musician and people. I don't really have that as a focal point. What I have is I'm trying to align myself with the present so viscerally that it expands and it kind of bends time a little bit. Maybe this is just my age talking or whatever, but I feel like I've spent too much of my time thinking about what I needed to accomplish and what I want to get done. And all of a sudden the day is gone and then another week is gone. And here we are at Christmas again. I don't understand how it happened. So my focus is not on legacy. It's on present and expanding the time that I have in this moment with the people who are around me. And that will be a life well lived.
I love that. I love that. I guess a better way to perhaps explain the question would be, what is the thing that motivates you, in the work that you do? What is the thing that you want to expand, that thing that you're talking about? What is the thing that you're excited about spreading through the work you're doing now?
Wow, that's a different question. I can answer that one. What I believe, what I stand for is demystifying being happy and achieving things in a way that is not grinding you down or causing you to sacrifice everything, that it's all possible for you. And there's some reality there. I mean, if you want to become a professional bodybuilder at 75, probably too late for that. But most of us have so much opportunity in front of us, and that we are the ones who stand in our own way of getting those things. whether it's an orchestra job or quitting your day job so you can run a business like this, that is all completely possible for you. You just need a plan. You need some honesty. You need some help. You need some guidance. You need some dedication and discipline. And I feel like if I can help people, I don't have a number in mind of clients I wish to serve by the time I retire from coaching. But if I can help, one person find out that that's possible for them, then I can die happy.
I love that. I love that. Thank you so much for spending this time with me, Chris. Is there anything else you would like to invite our listeners to do, to watch, to be, anything at all?
Well, not really. I think I covered it. Follow me on YouTube. Listen to my podcast. Instagram is, of course, always a thing. Everything is Honesty Pill. But I guess I would extend an invitation for anyone who's heard anything that we talked about today, wants to dig a little deeper. Just go to honestypill.com. There's places there to book a call with me or send me an email, chris@honestypill.com. I love talking to people and connecting. Whether or not we ever work together is not the goal. It's just hearing what people are thinking about, hearing what they're struggling with. It informs me and it inspires me to hear what's going on out there. So feel free to reach out.
Thank you so much. And we look forward to continuing to follow you and, of course, to see what's going to come up in your new YouTube channel. How exciting. I'm sure our listeners are going to be looking forward to that as well. Thank you for your time today, Chris. It's been great having you.
Thank you, Fabiana. And congratulations on all the work that you do. And I can't wait to see how your podcast explodes. Keep watching, everybody. She's got a lot of information to share, so this should be great.
Thank you. Thank you.